I had just finished folding the laundry for the third time that week when I overheard them talking about me in the kitchen. "She's not going to last much longer. She's getting slower," my daughter-in-law Cassandra said with a scoff. My son chuckled. "Yeah, but let her pay the bills for now. When she's gone, the house is ours anyway." I stood in the hallway, my back against the wall, their voices cutting into me like jagged glass. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was going to ask if they wanted tea, that's all. But now I stood frozen, my hands shaking, the teacups on the tray clinking like wind chimes in a storm. I'd lived in that house for 42 years. I had poured everything into it, my savings, my husband's pension, my energy, my health. And when my husband passed, I opened my doors to them because they needed time to get on their feet. That was 5 years ago. I paid for the groceries, the utilities, the property taxes, the repairs when Cassandra burned a hole in the countertop trying to flambe something from a cooking show. And still, I was reduced to an invisible servant in my own home. It didn't start this way. When they moved in, I was excited to have life in the house again. I baked, cooked, even redecorated the guest room for their comfort. But slowly, my presence became a burden. Cassandra once told her friend at brunch, loud enough for me to hear, "She clings to the kitchen like she's Marie Antoinette. It's just sad, really." I remember standing by the sink, pretending not to hear, but I felt that blow like a slap. The worst came on my 70th birthday. I had mentioned it days before, subtly, hoping they'd remember. Maybe a cake, a flower, a note. Instead, they invited friends over and hosted a party for Cassandra's podcast reaching 100 episodes. I was told to stay in my room because a bunch of young people don't want to hear old lady stories. I sat in my room that night with a slice of stale bread and some peanut butter. I wept silently, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses below stabbing at me. The next morning, I noticed something missing. My favorite family portrait. Me, my late husband, and our son when he was just 8, was gone from the hallway. In its place was a minimalist art piece Cassandra bought for aesthetic vibes. That was the final straw. But I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront them. Instead, I called Rosa. Rosa had been our maid when I first became a mother. She worked for me part-time after her husband died, and over the years, she became like a sister. When my husband passed, she was the one who sat with me the whole night in silence. Now in her 60s, she still cleaned houses to survive. "Rosa," I said when she picked up, "do you remember how you once told me you'd never had a home that was truly yours?" There was a pause. "I remember. Would you like one?" Rosa didn't answer right away, but I could hear her breathe, soft, shaky. "Are you joking?" "No," I said. "I'm done being treated like wallpaper, and you've always treated me like a person." That week I called my lawyer. I owned the house free and clear, and I rewrote my will. But not just that. I made a living deed transfer. Quietly. Legally. They wouldn't know, not yet. I started packing small things, books, my wedding ring, my mother's shawl, a few keepsakes. And on the day Cassandra threw a fit because I didn't sort the recycling correctly, I knew it was time to go. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. "I may be too old for your conversations, but I'm not too old to own this house. By the time you read this, I'll be gone, and so will your claim to everything under this roof." When Rosa pulled up in her little blue sedan, I was already on the porch, suitcase beside me, heart racing but head high. We drove off. They hadn't noticed yet, but they would. And when they did, everything would change. By the time Cassandra and my son returned from their weekend getaway, another luxury trip I unknowingly funded, my name had already disappeared from the mailbox. Cassandra burst into the house first, sunglasses still on. The house smells like lavender. Who sprays that old people air freshener?" She tossed her designer bag on the table. My son followed with his golf clubs, yawning. "Where's Mom?" They found the note within minutes. "Is this a joke?" he asked, rereading it, then again. Cassandra's smirk vanished. "She left," she hissed. "What does she mean, gone? And what does she mean, so will your claim? Wait, did she change her will?" But it wasn't just a change of will. By Monday morning, a courier delivered an official packet from my attorney to the house. Inside was a notice informing them of the legal transfer of ownership, not after death, but immediate, effective the day I left. The house was now under Rosa's name. She had quietly filed the deed transfer with the county office. Everything was final. I later heard from the neighbor's gardener that Cassandra screamed so loud the mailbox door fell off. That night, Cassandra called me 17 times. I didn't pick up. The next day, my son messaged me, "Mom, please, what's going on? We thought you wanted us here." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Rosa to ask how her first night in the house was. "I cleaned the windows," she laughed nervously. "Out of habit." I smiled. "You don't have to clean anymore, Rosa. Just enjoy it. You've earned peace." Rosa moved in with Grace. She kept the house warm. She lit candles every evening. She put fresh flowers on the table and played quiet music. She even invited her 2 grandchildren over to play in the backyard, the same one my son said was too small for real kids. Meanwhile, Cassandra and my son scrambled to find an apartment. They begged the lawyer to reverse it. He said no. "He gave you how much to fight it?" I asked when I heard they were hiring an attorney. 15 grand, Rosa whispered, almost apologetically. "They could have used that to finally pay for a month's worth of groceries," I laughed. They tried to argue that I wasn't mentally sound when I made the transfer. The attorney submitted notarized recordings proving my clarity and intent. Then came the twist no one saw coming. My husband, God rest him, had started a small retirement account when our son was born. The clause was simple. If our son cared for me in my elderly years, he'd inherit it. But if he failed that duty, the beneficiary passed to someone else of my choosing. Guess who I chose? Rosa. The account was modest, $78,000, but to Rosa, it was a miracle. She cried when the check arrived. She framed the letter from the bank. And as for me, I moved into a cozy senior living cottage by the coast, quiet, peaceful, paid in full. No more raised voices, no more slammed doors, no more being treated like furniture with a wallet. Just sunrises, coffee on the porch, and letters from Rosa telling me about how she'd finally started a little baking business from my old kitchen. Back at the house, Cassandra started posting online, painting me as cruel and unstable. She tried to rally sympathy from her followers. But the comment section turned against her. "You lived in her house and mocked her? You deserve worse. Imagine your mill gives you free housing and you treat her like trash. She's a queen, and you're lucky she didn't leave you with a bill." One day, my son finally messaged again. This time, it wasn't demanding. "Mom, I was wrong. We both were. I'm sorry. Can we meet?" I stared at the message. Then I deleted it. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just wanted closure for himself. But sometimes silence is the best reply. Because I wasn't trying to teach them a lesson anymore. I was just finally living without them. Weeks passed, and with each sunrise over the coast, I felt something I hadn't known in years. Freedom. My days were slow, tender. I'd sit near the window with my tea, listening to seagulls, flipping through old family photo albums. Not to weep. No, not anymore. But to remind myself that I had loved and that once they'd been worthy of it. Until they weren't. Then one Sunday, a knock came at my cottage door. It wasn't my son. It was Rosa. She was glowing, wearing a sky blue sundress and holding a box of pastries. "I brought your favorite," she said softly, "lemon custard." I let her in, poured coffee, and she told me everything. "They tried to come back," she said. 3 nights ago. Your son was drunk. He banged on the front door yelling that the house was his. Cassandra was crying, barefoot, holding her heels. I frowned. Rosa nodded. "I didn't open it. I called the police. They were gone by the time they arrived, but..." She looked ashamed. "I feel guilty. They're your family." I took her hand. "No, Rosa, you are." She bit her lip. "I want to do something. For you. For everything." What is it? She took a deep breath. I've decided to turn the house into a shelter. I blinked. A shelter? She nodded. A quiet place for elderly women who've been forgotten, abandoned by their children. I've already found a sponsor. We'll call it the Golden Room. A laugh escaped my lips, half shock, half pride. You'd do that? We would do that, she corrected. Your name will be on the wall. My eyes welled up. For once, tears weren't bitter. They were soft, healing. I hugged her, and it felt like hugging purpose. Meanwhile, Cassandra was sharing her side of the story on a podcast titled In-Laws from Hell. But even there, commenters weren't buying it. So she gave you a free mansion for years and you called her expired? Girl, be serious. The real villain is staring in the mirror. Then came the final twist. The neighborhood's historical committee honored the Golden Room with a community grant, $250,000 for restoration and expansion. Photos of Rose's shelter, once my cold old house, were now all over the local news. Elderly women planting flowers in the garden, a reading nook with armchairs and quilts, a fireplace that burned every night, not for warmth, but for memory. One journalist called it a poetic comeback for forgotten women. A month later, I was invited to cut the ribbon at the grand opening. When I walked in, gray hair combed, cane in hand, the crowd stood. Not for pity, for respect. And at the far end of the room, near the kitchen, a little boy ran up to me. Grandma Rosa says you saved Nelt. No, sweetheart, the house saved me. I never heard from my son again. But I did get a postcard, unsigned, from a dingy motel in Nevada. The handwriting was shaky. The message was 5 words. Imp, you were always enough. Sorry. I tore it in half. Not out of hate, but closure. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about walking forward, without the weight they left behind. And as the fireplace crackled that night, surrounded by women once abandoned, once silent, I looked around and smiled. They said I was too old to matter. Now, I was the reason others mattered again. Poetic justice wasn't loud. It was warm. And it wore lavender.